Hey guys, welcome to the new review for another series that I've started. We're going to talk about The Penguin. Now, this is set in the universe for The Batman with Robert Pattinson. And I'm going to start off by saying I never read the comics. I had always wanted to. Either there wasn't the money for it, or I didn't have enough of an interest, or it was overwhelming and didn't know where to begin. For whatever reason, that resulted in me not reading the comics. I just never did. And there are a lot of animated projects for DC and specifically Batman that I just haven't seen. I've seen all the live action movies, and I've seen some of the TV series. So, for my review of this series, I'm not necessarily going to compare it to very much at all. I sort of just want to dive into it within my own opinion and just sort of talk about what I like, what I didn't like, and see where it goes from there. Because I do really enjoy Robert Pattinson's Batman. So I think expanding this universe is a really smart move on their part. And I also am ecstatic that James Gunn has decided that the Batman will remain separate but in production. So we get more projects with this, but it doesn't have to be connected to all these other characters. And I know there have been so many series before where Batman is connected to so many other characters, but I think having a TV series and movies that's all within its same universe without the sort of the shadow of these other big villains or heroes, I think it's a good thing. I think it's something that will stay grounded, stay different, and I think just having something separate is a good thing. For better or worse, I think it's a good thing. And so let's sort of dive into the setting. Now, where we left off with the Batman, by the time the movie comes to a close, we know that Oz Cobb, as he's called in this show, Oswald Cobb, he's going to take power. We knew we were getting a series pretty early on, so it was expected that the Penguin was going to get more and more screen time within this universe. And so another thing with this episode, sort of how it starts, is because that's what this review is going to be, guys. If I hadn't specified it already, this is going to be episode 1. I want to review the one episode at a time. So for this first episode, as it opens, we get a really neat these neat shots of seeing him in the Iceberg Lounge, where as it's slowly zooming in on him, we're getting flashes of what's going on in the city. They're essentially recapping what happened in the movie. They're recapping what the Riddler did, and they're recapping how the flood has affected Gotham. And so we see this city slowly descending into darkness, and there's very much a power grab or a power vacuum in the Gotham City. And if you've seen trailers or if you've seen who was cast for the show, we know we have the Penguin, we know we have the Falcones, and we know we have the Maronis. So there are already 3 crime families that are essentially pitted against each other in this series. And those are the 3 that I know of. There could possibly be more that I just haven't heard of or seen yet. And so as we get these glimpses of this news article a little bit at a time, we're getting closer and closer to Penguin, where it zooms in on his eyes as he sort of just veers into the horizon of Gotham. And so I thought it really did set the tone. It set its gritty seriousness that the show is going to have, because that's something a lot of people like about this movie and this series collectively, is that it is a much darker form of the characters, not necessarily Zack Snyder's form of just being dark, where we're talking about lighting or sphere language or just the gruesome gore of beheadings. This isn't dark in that aspect. This is a very realistic, dark series. And yeah, Batman isn't the most realistic character. Sure, some of the stuff he's done and has can be man-made, replicated, I'm sure. But for the most part, with villains like the Riddler and the Penguin, these are just people, no superpowers. Now, I'm sure that that movie, the second movie, and I'm sure the rest of the series will have characters with powers eventually. But for now, we don't get a glimpse of any of that yet. So we get to just sort of take a step back and go back to the grittiness of sort of how it started. Batman in the comics, it was dark and gritty. And that's its beginnings. And so that's what we're getting again with this movie. And so far, that's what we're getting with this TV series. So enough with the recap, let's dive in. I've already mentioned the opening, let's talk about the story. Now, this series is definitely episodic. It's going to have the plot slowly building over a season, so we're not going to get standalone episodes, but I think it's overall a good thing. When you take a random TV series where each episode is something different, sometimes it really works. And for me personally, seasons that have one story the whole season can be better if it is done right. A season with one story, as long as they don't throw fillers in between, then it's interesting. The best example I can think of for Star Wars The Mandalorian, each of the 3 seasons had one background plot that it was pushing toward, but there were so many side missions or filler episodes that it's just sort of distracted from the story that we're supposed to be engaged in. I don't think that's the case with the Penguin right now. Now, I know I've only seen the first episode, but having a sort of plot like this where a power vacuum in Gotham, first of all, is interesting enough because you have so many characters in the Batman comics where you could have a different character story for an episode, but still be part of the same overall story. So I don't think a series like this really has room for filler, especially being 8 episodes. There are 7 out now. The 8th will premiere, and that's all we're going to get with the series. And so as we move on to the rest of these characters, the way I would sum it up is one season-long story works if you have a vast background of characters and organizations to use, like Batman. Batman is so easily a great choice for a series with one long story because you have so much different components to Gotham, and you can name drop the Batman. You can talk about the effects of Riddler. Now we can see what Oz Cobb has been doing. So I think there's just a lot of opportunity, but enough of that. Back to this episode. I'll sort of get this out of the way. The only negative I have with this episode, and from looking at the rest of the 7 episodes that are out right now, I think the only negative is how long the episodes are. They're all about 50 minutes or longer, closer to an hour or longer than an hour. So I know it's just sort of depends on your preference. I grew up with cable TV where we had 40-minute episodes. We saw them once a week, and commercials put this hour show into 40 minutes. So 40 minutes is just, that's the palette I have for TV series. Anything longer than that becomes exhausting. The story has to be really damn good to keep my interest beyond that generic 40 minutes. And this episode did, for the most part, keep my interest as far as the story is concerned, but the individual filming aspects of this episode, there were things that could have been trimmed. Characters traveling, for lack of a better term, from one location to the other. Some of that could have been cut, but overall, the story was interesting. The characters are interesting, and I think it was a really solid premiere overall. So now that that's much longer of a recap I wanted to give, let's get into the episode. So Carmine Falcone had died in the movie. So this series sort of picks up with who's going to be the next Falcone to take over. So we get Alberto Falcone, and pretty early on in the episode, he shows up at the Iceberg Lounge when we see Penguin trying to loot it, basically. And so they sort of have this confrontation, and the cleverness of the dialogue is what I think this series is going to use to propel itself from one episode to the next. Is my example in the scene where Oz and Alberto face off, Penguin's able to sort of talk his way out of, oh, well, he wasn't there looting. He was actually getting things for Alberto, and he just gives it to him. And here you go, saves me a trip. It's just his quick thinking to get out of his situations is, I think, the best part of the writing by far. And Alberto's sort of, he doesn't trust Penguin, but he's kind of buying what he's saying for now. And so at the end of the day, he sees Penguin as a pathetic loser. And out of ambition, or impulse, should I say, Penguin kills Alberto Falcone. And so now what to do with the body becomes sort of 2/3 of the episode's runtime for the story. and he's trying to figure out what to do. We get Victor Aguilar that he comes across. He's part of this group of teens trying to steal the rims off of Penguin's car. Penguin catches him and forces him to get involved and essentially work with him for the night, or work for him. And as they're traveling across the city trying to figure out what they're going to do with the body, ultimately he wanted to kill Victor, but he gives him a chance because he sees himself in him a little bit. And so Victor's now this young character. He doesn't have any grasp of power at all in this city. So he's essentially Penguin's henchman without any knowledge or skills or abilities. So as we move on from that, where as sunrise comes, the body has been, Penguin found a place to put it. And now we get to see more characters in this series that I feel will have much more screen time later on. So as he goes to have this meeting, the higher-ups that had worked for Falcone, they want to shut Penguin down, but he knew that Alberto was going to have this new drug that was going to sort of take over the streets. So as Penguin sort of passes this operation off as his own, his brother, or his sister, Sophia Falcone, actually walks in on the conversation. And so Penguin immediately, he's nervous, he thinks maybe he slipped up, maybe she knows what's going on. And ultimately in the meeting, they tell Penguin to shut it all down, even though he planned on taking over anyway. As he's leaving, Sophia wants to catch up. So as they go to have a conversation, you can tell Sophia's basically assuming that Penguin had him killed, but Penguin talks his way out of it. It sort of gives her an excuse, this temporary excuse that she can sort of believe for now. And so he's saying, yeah, Alberto, he's been, he's had problems with addiction before, so he's probably just gone AWOL and he'll be back. And that's his excuse. And it's believable for now, but you also see Sophia Falcone as this character that it doesn't buy that. She had been insane before. That's her only background, is she's been in Arkham. Now she's out of Arkham. That's it. We don't know if she got out of Arkham for some political stunt or they forced the Arkham guards. There's not a real detail part of it. She's been rehabilitated and she's out. And so now we have the second character part of this power vacuum in Gotham. And as they have their face-off, as they come to the conclusion that Alberto's out there somewhere, as Penguin goes about his day, he actually wants to go to his mother. So she gets screen time now. He wants her to pack up and leave, but she sort of convinces Penguin, why run? Just face it and take the power now. So she's sort of his bad influence motivator for what Penguin's probably going to do for the rest of the season. And so her character playing that kind of role is interesting. So I do like where it's going so far. And as we get to the next scene, he visits Salvatore Maroni in Blackgate. And as we learned in the Batman, someone actually had faked this drug bust to get Maroni put in prison, and it was Falcone himself. And so Salvatore Maroni, played by Clancy Brown, which I always love when Clancy Brown gets live action roles, because he's a phenomenal voice actor, but he has a very impactful presence when he has live action projects. So Salvatore Maroni has a lot of beef with the Falcones. Even though Carmine's dead, he still has reason to go after them. And so the ring that Alberto had on, which was Maroni's ring, Penguin took when he killed him, and now in prison, as he's visiting with him, he gives Maroni this pitch that he's not accepting. So as they go their separate ways, he says, oh yeah, I forgot. Here's your ring back. So Maroni has this ring, which would have come from Alberto Falcone. And as this episode progresses, Sophia sort of kidnaps Penguin. She's assuming he's the one that had Alberto killed. And just in the nick of time, Victor actually comes to his aid, as predetermined, because this is all part of the plan, is this car with the brick on the gas pedal shows up where Sophia is. And in the trunk is Alberto Falcone's body, with his pinky missing, where he had this ring, and it says payback on the trunk. And it's understood Maroni has the ring now, so Penguin is pitting the Maronis against Falcones, while he's sort of left in the middle. So even though he was kidnapped by Sophia Falcone, the next shot we get, he was let go, because now he's at this sort of slushy stand with Victor, as they were talking about earlier in the episode. And Victor finds out Salvatore Maroni doesn't know about this deal, so obviously he's being framed, but that's sort of just Penguin's role in things. And so now we have 3 different families all going after each other, and that is how we close our season premiere. So I'm very much looking forward to the rest of the episodes. I love the universe of Batman. I think his rogues gallery is just phenomenal. There are so many interesting characters, vigilantes, heroes, sidekicks, children of Batman. I think the whole world is just very, very interesting. And to see the movie introduce several characters, the movie introduced Falcone and Penguin and Riddler and essentially Joker, and we got Catwoman. The film already gave us so many characters, and now in this show we're getting the Maronis and the Falcones and Penguin. So this is very much a mob TV show, but it's interesting so far. It's got a compelling story. It's got me hooked. I'm going to watch more and more episodes. I definitely want to finish the series. And so I think there's just a really strong start to this universe. I know there were a couple of canceled TV shows. They were supposed to do, I believe they were supposed to do a series with Gotham Police that was scrapped. And then there was an Arkham series that I believe was scrapped. The Arkham series could still happen maybe, but I don't know. All I know is they are working on the Batman Part 2 next. That's going to be the next project within this universe. And so we'll see if Penguin gets another season. I don't know if he necessarily needs one. Not because he's a bad actor or a bad character. I think they could give a different character another TV show. And maybe after every movie, they have a show or 2, because there's just that many characters. So I would never get tired of it. I know some people might. I think DC, if they play their cards right, unlike Star Wars, where people are tired of Star Wars projects, I think when it comes to DC, there are enough characters where fans wouldn't get tired of it if the projects are done right and the characters are served justice. So, pun intended. So I think as far as Batman's concerned, there's a lot of opportunity for one series after another. I hope the movies is more than just a trilogy. We'll see, guys. Robert Pattinson's getting more and more roles. He's being highly recognized for his roles. So I hope he gets to play Batman for a long time. If not, then I'm sure we'll get more projects from this series. But I'm excited. I love this episode. I thought it was great. Like I said, some of the transporting characters from one location to another, just the car rides, some of that could have been trimmed and cut out, but was it bad? No, it just added to the length of the runtime. So overall, I really like this episode. I'm excited to see the rest of the series. I hope you guys are watching the series too. If so, let me know in the comments what you think so far. Thanks for keeping with me for the rest of this video. I'll see everyone next time.